You're in a conversation with someone you respect. You have a point worth making, but the moment you speak, something shifts. They nod politely, then move on as if you said nothing. Not because your point was invalid, because the words you used made you dismissible. And once they've decided you're not worth listening to, changing that impression is nearly impossible. Most people think confidence is about what you say. It's not. It's about what you don't say. Certain phrases, no matter how reasonable they sound, signal weakness, uncertainty, and lack of conviction the instant you speak them. The Stoics understood this. Strength isn't performed through impressive words. It's revealed by eliminating the language that undermines you before you've even finished your sentence. This isn't about being arrogant or refusing to show humility. It's about stopping the habit of sabotaging yourself with phrases that give people permission to ignore you. Because the difference between being heard and being dismissed often comes down to 6 specific phrases you need to eliminate immediately. Marcus Aurelius taught, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." The same applies to presence. Stop trying to sound strong while using weak language. Just stop using the words that diminish you. Today, I'll show you 6 phrases that make you look weak the moment they leave your mouth. Phrase number 3 is one people use constantly to sound polite, but it actually tells others you don't believe you deserve their attention. Remove it and watch how quickly people start taking you seriously. If you're ready to eliminate the language patterns making you dismissible, subscribe. Let's identify what's been sabotaging you. Phrase number 1, I think and I feel. The moment you start with these words, you've told everyone your statement is just opinion, dismissible, negotiable, uncertain. Here's what happens. I think we should try this approach sounds tentative. We should try this approach sounds decisive. Same recommendation, completely different impact. Starting with I think frames everything that follows as subjective, something that can be dismissed without consideration. I feel like this might work signals you're operating on emotion, not reason. Both phrases create permission for others to ignore you. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Know your position, then state it clearly. Qualification is appropriate for genuine uncertainty, but constantly hedging every statement signals you don't believe in your own thinking, and if you don't believe it, why should anyone else? I watched this play out at a family dinner 3 years ago. We were discussing where to go on vacation. My cousin started, I think maybe we could consider going somewhere warm. I feel like the beach might be nice. Polite nods. No one took it seriously. My aunt, 5 minutes later. We're looking at 2 options, mountains or beach. The beach works better for everyone's schedule. Same basic suggestion, beach. But she stated it as reasoned conclusion, not tentative feeling. Her option was discussed seriously. His was forgotten. 7 why. The difference wasn't expertise or authority, it was language. One asked permission for his thinking to be considered, the other presented thinking as worth considering. One got dismissed, the other got engaged with. Here's what to say instead. State your position directly. This approach solves the problem because, or, based on what we're seeing, we should, or, here's what makes sense. You're not claiming to know everything. You're presenting reasoned thinking confidently. There's a difference between arrogance and clarity. Now, these phrases do have appropriate uses. If you're genuinely uncertain, I think this might work, but I need more data to be sure. If it's pure personal preference, I feel this color looks better when choosing paint. If you're expressing emotion, I feel uncomfortable with this decision as a boundary. Those are honest, specific uses. But eliminate I think and I feel from professional assessments, recommendations, and any situation where you're presenting reasoned conclusions. You've already thought, you've already felt. Now just state what you concluded. Don't make people wade through your internal process to get to your point. The room responds differently when you stop asking permission to have reached a conclusion. Not because you're louder or more aggressive, because you've stopped signaling that your own thinking is optional. Starting weak undermines everything that follows. But the second phrase is even more damaging. It makes you sound like you don't even deserve to ask the question. P-raise number 2. This might be a dumb question, but you've just told everyone in the room that you don't respect your own thinking. Why should they? Preemptively calling your own question dumb ensures others will treat it as such. This phrase is self-sabotage disguised as humility. You're giving permission, asking permission to be dismissed. The Stoics taught, own your inquiry. Questions are how we learn. There are no dumb questions, only unexamined assumptions. But when you label yours as dumb before asking it, you've told everyone not to take you or your thinking seriously. Socrates built an entire philosophy on asking questions. He didn't start with, this might be foolish to wonder, but he asked directly, powerfully, because questions expose truth. Marcus Aurelius constantly questioned his own assumptions in his private writings, but he did it with strength, not apology. I saw this destroy someone's credibility at a workshop 2 years ago. The instructor was explaining a new software system. A participant raised her hand. This might be a dumb question, but what if we approach the data entry differently? The instructor immediately replied, no dumb questions. But the tone was reassuring, almost patronizing. The room treated her question as entry level, something obvious she should already know. Her suggestion, which was actually innovative, got filed away as beginner confusion. 20 minutes later, a different participant asked essentially the same thing, but framed it differently. Help me understand. What would happen if we reversed the data entry sequence? The instructor paused, considered it seriously. That's interesting. Let me think through the implications. The room leaned in. They discussed it for 10 minutes. Same question. Completely different reception. One apologized for thinking. The other owned the inquiry. Here's what to say instead. Help me understand, or walk me through, or what would happen if, or simply ask your question directly without preamble. You're not claiming expertise. You're seeking clarity. That's legitimate. That's how learning happens. You can acknowledge what you don't know without calling yourself dumb. These phrases do have a place, but it's smaller than you think. If you're in an expert room and genuinely worried, your question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding. I'm not familiar with this area, can you explain? That's honest without being self-deprecating. But this might be dumb has no place in professional contexts. Ever. When you stop apologizing for your curiosity, people engage with it. When you stop prejudging your questions as stupid, others stop judging them that way too. Not because you're more knowledgeable, because you've stopped giving them permission to dismiss you before you've even finished asking. If you've ever caught yourself saying, this might be dumb, before asking a question, and you're realizing now that you were sabotaging your own credibility, comment, I stopped apologizing below. Your 3 words might give someone else permission to stop diminishing their own curiosity. Apologizing for your thinking makes you dismissible. But the third phrase is even worse. It signals you don't believe you deserve what you're asking for. Praise number 3. Sorry to bother you, but you've just announced that you don't believe you deserve their attention. And you're probably right, because now they don't believe it either. Starting with an apology for existing makes you immediately forgettable and easy to deprioritize. Sorry to bother you signals that your needs are less important than their time, which may be true, but saying it aloud establishes you as low priority. The Stoics understood value doesn't apologize for existing. Legitimate requests don't require preemptive apology. When you apologize before making a reasonable ask, you've told the other person they're doing you a favor by acknowledging you exist. Epictetus taught about dignity and self-respect. He understood that owning your needs without shame is different from being demanding or entitled. Legitimate requests deserve direct communication, But when you pre-apologize for having needs, you've already positioned yourself beneath consideration. I learned this the hard way with a neighbor 4 years ago. I needed to ask if he could keep his music down after 11 at night. First attempt, I knocked on his door. "Hey, sorry to bother you, but would it be possible, if it's not too much trouble, to maybe turn the music down a bit after 11? He said sure, but nothing changed. A week later, still loud. I realized I'd given him an out. I'd apologized for having a boundary. Second attempt, different approach. "The music after 11 is keeping me awake. I need it kept down after that time. No apology. No, if possible. Just the boundaries stated clearly." He looked surprised, then nodded. "Oh yeah, no problem." It stopped that night. Same neighbor, same request, different result. The first time I'd asked as if I didn't deserve quiet at night. The second time I stated what I needed. One was ignored, the other was respected. Here's what to say instead. State what you need directly. "I need this by Thursday," or "quick question," or "can you help with this," or "following up on." No apology. You're not being rude, you're being clear. There's a difference between respecting someone's time and apologizing for taking any of it. Now, apologies do have a place. If you're genuinely creating an inconvenience, "Sorry for the short notice, I need this by tomorrow." If you made a mistake, "Sorry, I missed the deadline." If it's truly an emergency interruption, "Sorry to interrupt, but this is urgent." Those are appropriate because something genuinely warrants apology. But eliminate the reflexive, "Sorry to bother you" from routine requests and normal interaction. You're not bothering them, you're communicating. That's what people do. When you stop apologizing for having needs, people stop treating your needs as optional. Not because you're demanding, because you've stopped giving them permission to ignore you. Apologizing for existing makes you easy to ignore. But the fourth phrase doesn't just make you look weak, it makes you look incompetent. Phrase number 4, "I'm no expert, but..." Disclaiming your own credibility before making a point ensures no one takes that point seriously. This phrase says, "I'm about to say something, but I don't want to be held accountable for knowing what I'm talking about." The Stoics valued truth over ego. If you have a valid point, make it. If you're genuinely uncertain, research before speaking. But prefacing with "I'm no expert" tells everyone to disregard what follows, because even you don't stand behind it. Marcus Aurelius constantly questioned his own knowledge in his private writings. But when he spoke publicly, he spoke with clarity. He didn't preface every statement with disclaimers about his limitations. He said what he knew, acknowledged what he didn't, and never apologized for the difference. I watched this play out at a neighborhood association meeting 5 years ago. The topic was whether to add speed bumps to our street. A retired engineer raised his hand. "I'm no expert, but it seems like speed bumps might help with the speeding problem." People nodded politely. The discussion moved on. He actually was an expert, had worked in traffic engineering for 30 years, but his disclaimer made everyone treat his input as uninformed opinion. Later in the meeting, a teacher who knew nothing about traffic engineering said, "Based on what I've seen in other neighborhoods, speed bumps reduce speeds by about 15 miles per hour on average. I looked into this after the last meeting." No disclaimer, no apology for speaking, just the information stated clearly. Her suggestion carried weight. The group voted to research speed bumps based primarily on her input, not the actual engineers. Same recommendation, completely different reception. One disclaimed credibility, the other simply presented information. Here's what to say instead. Speak from what you actually know. "In my experience," or "what I've observed is," or "the research shows," or just state your point directly. You're not claiming to know everything. You're sharing what you do know. That's legitimate. That's valuable. You can acknowledge specific gaps without a blanket disclaimer of incompetence. These disclaimers do have limited use. If you're genuinely outside your domain, "I'm not a lawyer, but from a practical standpoint. That's specific, not global. Or, this isn't my area, but you might consider. You're acknowledging a boundary while still contributing. But I'm no expert as a blanket statement before every opinion. That tells people you're guessing and hoping to be right. When you stop disclaiming your own credibility, people stop dismissing your contributions. Not because you've suddenly become an expert, because you've stopped telling them you're not one. Present what you know, acknowledge what you don't, but never preemptively announce that nothing you're about to say should be taken seriously. If these 5 phrases are showing you exactly how you've been undermining yourself with words, and you're realizing language shapes how people see you, subscribe and hit like. We have one more phrase to cover, and it's the one that kills disagreement before you even voice it. Phrase number 5. Does that make sense? Ending statements with, "Does that make sense?" shifts responsibility for understanding from you, the communicator, to them, the listener. It signals you're not confident you've explained things clearly. Worse, it sounds like you're polling the room for validation, that you're allowed to think what you just said. The Stoics communicated with clarity, then moved forward. They didn't seek approval for having made a point. Epictetus taught, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. If you've learned it, say it clearly. Then confirm they understood, which is their issue to clarify, not your insecurity to validate." The question isn't whether your explanation makes sense. The question is whether they need clarification. I learned this from a painful experience 3 years ago. I was explaining to a friend why I'd decided to change careers. I laid out my reasoning, my research, my plan. Then I ended with, "Does that make sense?" She hesitated, then said, I guess." That hesitation told me everything. My question had introduced doubt about whether my thinking was coherent. I'd asked her to validate my decision, not understand it. A year later, different friend, similar conversation about a major life change. I explained my reasoning, then stopped, just stopped talking. She thought for a moment, then asked specific questions. What about health insurance? And have you calculated the income difference? Those were engagement questions. She was working through the decision with me, not questioning whether my thinking made sense. The difference was that I hadn't asked her to validate my coherence. I'd assumed clarity and invited questions instead. Here's what to say instead. What questions do you have? Or what needs clarification? Or is anything unclear? Or simply stop talking after you've made your point. Let silence do the work. You're not questioning whether you made sense. You're checking if they need more information. That's confident. That's clear. That respects both their intelligence and your communication. Now, checking understanding does have its place. After explaining something technical, did I explain that clearly? Focuses on your delivery, not your coherence. When teaching, what part should I revisit? Is supportive, not seeking validation, but does that make sense? Suggests you're not sure your own thinking is sensible. The phrase reveals self-doubt disguised as consideration. You think you're being helpful by checking comprehension, but you're actually asking them to confirm you're not confused. That's different. One invites engagement. The other invites doubt about whether you know what you're talking about. When you stop seeking validation for having spoken, people engage with what you said instead of questioning whether it was worth saying. Your ideas get considered on merit, not dismissed because you've already expressed uncertainty about whether they're coherent. Seeking validation for thinking makes you sound uncertain, but the final phrase is the worst. It makes you sound like you believe you're probably wrong before anyone's even disagreed. Phrase number 6. You're probably right, but... Starting disagreement by conceding you're probably wrong ensures your actual point gets dismissed. This phrase means, I'm about to disagree, but I don't believe in my disagreement enough to actually stand behind it. The Stoics disagreed when they had reason to disagree, and they did it directly. If you genuinely think someone's wrong, say so and explain why. If you don't think they're wrong, don't disagree. But don't undermine your own counterpoint before making it. Marcus Aurelius welcomed being corrected when he was wrong, but when he believed he was right, he stated his position clearly first. Disagreement should be confident or silent. Weak disagreement is worse than no disagreement because it suggests you're objecting out of obligation, not conviction. I watched this destroy someone's input at a family planning meeting 2 years ago. We were deciding how to handle my grandmother's care as her health declined. My uncle had proposed moving her to an assisted living facility. My aunt clearly disagreed but started with, "You're probably right that assisted living makes sense, but I just wonder if maybe she'd be happier staying at home with some help." The room heard, "I know you're right, but I have feelings that don't matter." Her concern, which was actually valid, got nodded at and dismissed. The conversation moved forward as if she'd agreed. My mother, who had similar concerns, spoke up 10 minutes later. "I see a specific problem with that timeline. She told me last week she's terrified of leaving her home. Moving her now, while she's still aware, would be traumatic. I think we need to explore in-home care first. No pre-concession, just, here's the issue. Here's why it matters. Here's what I think we should do instead." The room stopped, reconsidered. They ended up researching both options seriously because my mother had stated her position like she believed it. "Here's what to say instead. I see it differently, here's why," or "I have concerns about that approach," or "the data suggests something else," or just state your disagreement directly without apologizing for having it. Own your position or don't voice it. Half-hearted disagreement is worse than agreement because it wastes everyone's time with objections even you don't believe in. Now, deference does have its place. If someone genuinely has more expertise, you know this area better than I do, though I'm wondering about this specific aspect. That's acknowledging real knowledge difference. But you're probably right, as a blanket opener kills your credibility before you've made your point. When you stop preconceding every disagreement, people actually consider what you're saying. Not because you've become more confrontational, because you've stopped signaling that you don't believe your own objections. Strong disagreement gets evaluated. Weak disagreement gets dismissed. The difference is whether you sound like you're disagreeing because you should or because you actually see something they don't. These 6 phrases, "I think," "this might be dumb," "sorry to bother you," "I'm no expert," "does that make sense?" and "you're probably right," but they don't make you sound humble or polite. They make you sound weak. And weakness invites dismissal. Marcus Aurelius taught, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." Be one. Stop performing uncertainty with language. Stop apologizing for existing. Stop disclaiming your own credibility. Stop seeking validation for having spoken. Strength isn't about being loud or aggressive. It's about eliminating the words that signal you don't believe in your own value. You don't need to add anything to sound confident. You just need to stop subtracting from yourself with every sentence. Say what you mean. Own your thinking. Stop asking permission to deserve attention. The room's energy will shift immediately because you've stopped giving people permission to dismiss you. If these phrases revealed language patterns undermining you, subscribe. The way you speak shapes how you're seen. Change your language. Command your presence. Remember, confidence isn't what you say, it's what you stop saying. Eliminate these 6 phrases. Watch how differently people respond when you stop sabotaging yourself with words.